Welcome to this week's episode of Taiwan Tech Update, your weekly roundup of tech news stories from here in Taiwan, presented by me, Tomasz Koper, and Radio Taiwan International. This week, I spoke to Simon Fang, a founding partner of Darwin Ventures and a veteran of Taiwan's semiconductor industry, about possible power constraints, challenges, and expectations from Computex, which is only a few days away at the time of recording. Stick around to the second part of the show for that. But first, as always, let's look at Taiwan-related tech news stories for the week of May 24th to 29th. Last Friday, although too late to make it into last week's show, US President Donald Trump said that Beijing has refused to allow its domestic tech industry to buy NVIDIA's H200 AI chips. Trump said the reason was simple. China wants to develop its own technology rather than rely on chips imported from its strategic rival. This came a day after the US Department of Commerce finally approved the sales. Now, in January, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said the demand for H200 chips in China was very high. But it seems Beijing wants to steer its tech companies away from imported technology and pour their resources into developing domestic chips. DeepSeek's latest V4 model from April is optimized to run on Huawei's Ascend chips and not NVIDIA hardware, while hardware companies are pouring more money into domestic tech, which is incidentally seeing spikes in price and demand. It will be interesting to see how this China-US rivalry will impact the development of hardware and software ecosystems, and whether the world will move away from interoperability and toward a tech divide along geopolitical lines. On Sunday, the National Institute of Cybersecurity under the Ministry of Digital Development announced that in 2025, public agencies reported a total of 726 information security incidents, over two-thirds of which were illegal intrusions. The institute identified 5 major security threats and suggested methods to protect against them. The threats include downloading and installing fake software, ransomware attacks, vulnerabilities in supply chain control, vulnerabilities or configuration risks in edge devices, and social engineering breaches. The last category is something no firewall can protect against, since those attacks rely on tricking or coercing a system user to share their password or facilitate a breach in some other way. Taiwan is the target of all kinds of cybersecurity attacks, both by malicious state actors, but also just scammers and fraudsters who take advantage of how technology-forward the country tends to be in a lot of ways. That's obviously not a great thing, but thanks to how often people here are reminded about and trained to avoid security risks, the people here seem to be developing the skills and experience to combat those risks. Or at least that's both my and the government's hope. On Monday, the Chinese technology giant Huawei announced its new set of design principles they're calling the Tau Scaling Law. Tau here is the Greek letter Tau and stands for time. The head of the company's semiconductor business, He Tingbo, unveiled the new principles at the IEEE International Symposium on Circuits and Systems in Shanghai. According to Huawei's press release, the law proposes replacing geometric scaling with time, hence Tau scaling, focusing on shortening signal travel times and improving transistor density through technologies such as logic folding. The result of this is a 3D chip architecture that stacks silicon and allows, as the company claims, to reach transistor density equivalent to 1.4 nanometer process by 2031. All this is an effort to circumvent sanctions and restrictions on advanced manufacturing equipment and technology that many Chinese entities are unable to get. I'm going to jump ahead in time a bit here because on Thursday, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang commented on the technology, calling it impressive, but also something that TSMC and others in Taiwan have been using and maturing for almost a decade at this point. I wrote this script using a computer with a 3D packaged CPU, where cache memory is directly stacked on top of the silicon, and even though it's not exactly the same thing as Huawei's Tao, I think I'm with Jensen on this one. This isn't exactly ground-shattering breakthrough, and Huawei's timeline of 2031 isn't knocking anyone's socks off either. Also on Monday, the Taiwanese drone maker Thunder Tiger announced the signing of a strategic cooperation memorandum with Elan Microelectronics, which will allow it to go from being an unmanned systems integrator to a co-developer of key technologies. The deal will reportedly include developing AI guidance, image recognition, and communication technologies, and using Elan's core hardware tech. Thunder Tiger hopes this will strengthen its position in what's often being called the democratic supply chain. You may have also heard it called the non-red supply chain. In case it's not immediately obvious, that's a supply chain structure that eliminates inputs from China as much as possible due to security concerns. Another interesting aspect of this cooperation, according to Thunder Tiger, is fitting into the dual-use policy directive pushed forward by the Taiwanese government. In peacetime, the new technology platform can be used for commercial purposes, like smart inspections, or in disaster search and rescue, border patrols in agriculture, maritime inspections, infrastructure management, or smart logistics. But in times of war, it will have the capacity to be incorporated into national defense efforts. Thunder Tiger is the first Taiwanese drone manufacturer to be added to the Blue UAS whitelist of unmanned technology solutions for military and government applications in the United States. So the company does have quite the market to fight for. On Tuesday, Economy Minister Gong Mingxin said that the memory and storage manufacturer Micron Technology's decision to expand its investment in Taiwan was due to the government's high administrative efficiency. Micron is trying to capitalize on the soaring demand for memory by quickly expanding its production capacity, and the Taiwanese government seems very eager to oblige by making it easy to set up a factory here. I'm not sure I would ascribe Micron's decision entirely to the government streamlining its administrative processes, but being closer to the tech and talent ecosystems here certainly won't hurt the company's bottom line. On Tuesday, Taiwan External Trade Development Council, or TAITRA, Chairman James Huang announced that the upcoming Computex trade show will feature keynote speeches from some heavyweights of the tech world, including CEOs of Qualcomm, Intel, Marvell, and NXP. Jensen Huang is also set to give a speech on Monday, June 1st, so a day before the start of Computex. The theme this year will be AI Together, because of course, but the show will also feature exhibitors in the fields of robotics, mobility, and next-gen technologies. Huang also said that the combined market capitalization of the companies taking part in the event exceeds $10 trillion. Now, I've been going to Computex for a number of years now, and this year will be no different, so expect to hear voices from the show floor in next week's Taiwan Tech Update. Another announcement on Tuesday may interest the readers out there. MediaTek announced it will deepen collaboration with the e-ink display maker Yuantai, which goes by e-ink internationally, to make new color ebook readers based on MediaTek's new hardware. The company says its two new SoC chips have built-in neural processing units, which can support on-device AI applications like speech recognition, transcription, summarizing, and translation in more than 20 languages. I will hold judgment on the AI features, but new ebook readers are something I, for one, will be looking out for. On Thursday, a researcher at the Taiwan Institute of Economic Research, Liu Peizhen, said that Intel and TSMC have moved beyond direct competition in the semiconductor manufacturing and toward a more symbiotic relationship that is a mix of competition and cooperation. She said that the market is watching to see if Intel will further entrust the manufacturing of its next generation chips to TSMC to consolidate its market share in the AI PC and data center markets. This will serve as a key indicator of the depth of the cooperation between the two tech giants. With Intel CEO Li Butan speaking at Computex and expected to meet with supply chain partners on the sidelines of the event, we might get a clear answer shortly. We may know even more about TSMC's capacity planning, the progress of overseas expansion projects, and advanced packaging after TSMC's annual shareholders meeting on June 4th. All of those things may impact product timelines for the company's clients, including Intel. Also on Thursday, a visiting German lawmaker said that Germany cannot rely too heavily on China if it hopes to maintain a competitive edge in the global AI and next-gen industries, while Taiwan will be a key partner for the country in developing AI and alternative supply chains. The German-Taiwan Parliamentary Friendship Group chair Thiel Steffen spoke with the German radio Deutschlandfunk as the German Economy Minister Katharina Reike visited China and expressed hope that Beijing would provide a fairer competitive environment for German companies. She highlighted issues such as overcapacity, export dumping, and government subsidies. Commenting on that, Steffen said that Germany's future economic and trade relations with China must be based on fairness, which means Germany cannot become overly dependent on it. This is especially important in key sectors such as energy storage, where Germany must seek to diversify supply, presently mostly from China. Steffen added that Germany and Taiwan are currently promoting joint research on next-generation battery technology and said Taiwan is also an excellent partner in the field of artificial intelligence. And finally, on Friday, Liu Yangwei, the chairperson of Honhai, also known as Foxconn, said the company's global market share in AI servers is now over 40%, and also that it will aim to become the world leader in co-packaged optics, or CPO. All of that came at Honhai's annual shareholders meeting, where the company also announced a record high dividend of 7.2 NT dollars, or around 22 US cents per share. Liu said the AI market performance is the effect of a decade of investment and that the company's revenue share from cloud and networking products rose to 40% this year from 20% in the past due to the strong demand for AI servers. Liu also said Honhai will start shipping co-packaged optics switches this year with an expected volume of 10,000 units. This technology uses photons instead of electrons to carry information, allowing for better power efficiency and network resiliency. The company expects the sales of CPO switches to grow several-fold next year. CPO and silicon photonics are fascinating tech topics that I hope to explore in future episodes, so stay tuned for that. This week, I spoke to Simon Fang, a veteran of the Taiwanese chip industry who quite literally wrote a textbook on semiconductor manufacturing. He is now a founding partner at Darwin Ventures, sitting at the intersection of technology and business. I was hoping to get his insights into Jensen Huang's comments on Taiwan's power limitations vis-a-vis semiconductor production and use, as well as on some of the other challenges facing the sector and expectations from Computex. Here's how our conversation went. Simon, Jensen Huang recently said Taiwan needs more power and that without power, there's no economic growth. How serious of a problem are energy constraints for Taiwan's semiconductor industry?
Power is less a problem today because TSMC, I think, is building a lot of factory outside Taiwan. I think it's more about power storage because after we abolish the nuclear power plant, utilization of solar plus wind, increase. But the problem is you only have a power during the daytime. how you store all this power in the daytime, So I think storage is more critical than the power itself. And I also do not think, Taiwan will be a place to build a mega data center. I am less concerned about the power, but of course, Jensen has his position to talk about the power. Power is important, but I don't think that's a problem today for the semiconductor industry.
What do you see as challenges for the semiconductor industry for chip makers in the near future?
Well, I mean, people are pounding table, ask TSMC to expand. Like Elon Musk want to build his own fab, right? Terra fab. But the problem is building fab is not that easy. You got to get a lot of people, land, water supply, everything. So it's not something. It's like software. You can just turn on the bottom, and so I think it's gonna move a little bit slower. But on the other hand, is somebody has to place a brake, on the AI. I'm a little bit concerned about the overexpansion, or the current cash flow of all these big guys. Continue the spending on the AI, not necessary to be very healthy for the long term. So I think there's a check and balance mechanism between foundry and the end data center users.
Well, Taiwan External Trade Development Council, or TAITRA, says that AI-related industries are expected to account for around 70% of Taiwan's exports in the latter half of this year, in the next 6 months. Is that too much AI? Is Taiwan relying too much on this one sector?
No, I'm not too worried about it because I mean this AI is everywhere, right? But last year is the first year the export of China to U.S. lower than the export of Taiwan to U.S. I'm more worrying about the trade deficit issue rather than the simply the AI. Of course, the AI contribute, a lot of this. So I think government or the private sector should probably notice about the pressure from the White House. We probably need to build a less mile assembly lines outside Taiwan. Otherwise, the trade deficit issue will not be resolved.
Well, but that takes a long time. There's a long lead time between having a plan to, do semiconductor manufacture or even assembly, even last mile, and then actually making it happen. That's years into the future, isn't it?
No. The export is not necessarily just semiconductor. A lot of assembly, the AI server. Taiwan probably produce 85 to 90% of AI server in the world. A lot of them you can be assembly line. Building an assembly lines in US really would not take that long. It's not like a semiconductor plant. And also you're procuring a lot of DRAM, from Korea. And to the end, you ship it out from Taiwan. All this has to contribute your trade deficit. So I think government is actually trying really hard or try to build a less assembly, to push all these guys to go out of Taiwan. I mean, this is a trade deficit is good, but when you see a huge imbalance of the trade deficit, that's going to be a problem for the long term.
With Computex around the corner, we have big names coming to Taipei. We have Jensen Huang, who's already here, but also Intel CEO Li Putan and Qualcomm's Cristiano Amon, just to name a couple. What are you expecting from these heavyweights, meeting here in Taipei?
Well, I think they will be pounding on the table to ask TSMC to build more factory, because risks will be at the TSMC, not these guys. Everybody want to win the dogfight. They want to get as many chip as possible. But I think TSMC has to figure out how to deal with all this.
One big topic was Intel and TSMC developing a more symbiotic relationship, moving from just pure competition to more of a sort of balanced competition, looking for some kind of development strategy there. Are you expecting TSMC to accommodate Intel in what it needs from them in terms of production capacity and product schedule in the latter half of the year?
I only see the announcement of UMC, right? UMC and Intel already signed agreement. UMC will build a 12 nanometer factory in the US. That's the part, that part is already confirmed. TSMC, I'm not so sure. But on the other hand, Intel has a very excellent technology on the back end, the so-called the CoWoS process type of something like that. So that's actually the bottleneck for TSMC today. So there's might be customer using TSMC wafer, and but do the backend assembly packaging, using the Intel process. That can happen, but that will be determined by the end customer, not necessarily TSMC versus Intel. And on the other hand, to have a competitor like Intel is healthy. Otherwise, TSMC will soon face a challenge on the antitrust.
Finally, before I let you go, again, Computex around the corner. What are you personally excited about when it comes to Computex? Are you excited to meet with anyone in particular, or listen to any of the keynotes, or listen to any of the announcements that are coming our way?
I think all these guys, are starting to confronting each other. I mean, want to pick a very simple example. March GTC, Jensen Huang announced autonomous driving. Basically, that's a direct challenge to Uber. And the Elon Musk always a problem with OpenAI, and no mention about Anthropic is getting the enterprise market share from OpenAI. I'm curious about how these guys are competing with each other. Originally, we think NVIDIA is a chip maker, maybe like XAI or OpenAI or Google are end user, but Google is developing their own GPU, TPU. So sooner or later, these guys will be confronting each other, even they used to be just supply relationship. I'm kind of curious about to see how would that happen, and also Apple never really have an aggressive plan on AI. So I want to see what is the announcement for Apple.
Definitely interesting stuff coming our way. Thank you for this conversation, Simon Fang, founding partner at Darwin Ventures and a veteran of the semiconductor industry who quite literally wrote the textbook on chip manufacturing technology. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And that's all I have for you in this week's episode of Taiwan Tech Update. Thank you for staying with me, and if you have any ideas or opinions on the show, its format, topics, or just technology in general, you can email them to me at Tomasz, that's TOMASZ, @rti.org.tw. Please include Taiwan Tech Update or TTU in the subject line. I'm your host, Tomasz Koper, and I'll be back with another update next week.
Thank you.